Robert J. Conley here, and I I got a. If you've seen my last few videos, I've touched on the topic of suffering, and I don't smile when I talk about suffering. And I want to make a critical distinction. I am not talking about grief. I'm not talking about the pain of loss. And so, for example, in the past year, as we've gone through COVID, I am not making light of the true grief and the loss that has occurred. However, what I do see regarding suffering is that many, well, I should say many, us as humans, we fail. We sometimes hope that there won't be suffering, and so there always will be suffering. We are humans. We live on planet Earth, and so Nietzsche said it best. He said, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." And what I'm going to talk about today, though, is also to focus and choose meaning, just knowing there will be suffering. Um, but there's suffering from things that you can control, that we can control, and there's suffering from things we can't. And it's a common mistake to miss that distinction. And it's in failing to conquer the things from which we're suffering that we can control, that we inhibit our effective coping with things we can't. So if you have things that you control that are causing you suffering and you're not aggressively working on those, you are already working at half power, half speed. You're already depleting your resiliency and your ability to cope with the suffering that will come from elsewhere. And it is hard. And I think a great quote from a French surgeon from the I think it was the 1800s. He was a Nobel Prize winner, Alexis Carrel, and he said, "Man cannot remake himself without suffering, for he is both the marble and the sculptor." Man cannot remake himself without suffering, for he is both the marble and the sculptor. So it's hard to be our own observer. Now, you have a shot at, or I shouldn't have a shot, but a way to make this productive, to make it manageable, comes back to something I've spoken about in the past. I just want to bring it up again because I can't say it often enough. Career satisfaction will come from an alignment of your temperament, your natural abilities, your values, and your interests. And to the degree that you can have those aligned, you will reduce your suffering. You have reduced your controllable suffering, and you will become more resilient and able to handle the exterior sources of suffering that you can't control. So I urge you to, first of all, if nothing else, sit down and make a list of what interests you, what grabs you. And it doesn't even have to apply to work, just what interests you. And then the second thing are your values. Do you value teamwork? Do you value affiliation? Do you value prestige? Do you value autonomy? Just explore your own set of values and become aware of those two things. Then turn and apply them to your work life. And, those are the easy, relatively easy, free things you can do to ask those questions. Now, the next step, which people will take and try to do on their own, but which is not a productive way to do it, are to try to figure out temperament and natural abilities on your own. The more powerful move is to enlist a trained expert like myself. Now, I guess this is kind of a commercial, but it's not a commercial specific to me. I'm urging you. I mean, I'd love it if anybody who wants to work with me, I welcome. But what I'm trying to do is urge you to enlist a third party observer because you're the marble and the sculptor. You need an observer that can help you see these things. And one of the risks with using free online like Myers-Briggs, one example, I don't know if I wanted to name that, but anyway, some of these assessments, they're unreliable. I can tell you from my own experience and training that online assessments are almost always off or slightly off. I should say almost always, at least half the time. Now, the other part is that the assessments I use, which are the real deal, are incredibly thorough, still require a verification process. And oftentimes, because these are self-reporting responses, oftentimes there is something slightly off also from the assessment that is done just solely on the assessment as it is completed by the person prior to review. And so the importance of having an expert who will confirm accuracy with you, number one. And number two, the even more important step is where to go from there, is to have that person like myself who helps you explore the world to see the alternatives that align with your interests, values, natural abilities, and temperament, and to engage that expertise so that you can have a broader picture of where you are. Because again, one of the risks when you are suffering and you potentially shut down and cease to be effective, your creativity will shut down. And if you're trying to do this alone, you're really trying to climb up a really real steep cliff. So the thing that I want to leave you with is the challenge to do this work. We've had a year of really miserable situation. We're coming out. I think we're having a feeling of, where things are returning to normal. And now is an opportune time to engage this work, to look for new opportunities, and to control the suffering that you can control to control. And I want to leave you with this quote by famed psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And it says, "The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have fought their way out of the depths." And I can tell you, that's some hard work and some really sweet results waiting if you'll engage in it. I'm Robert J. Conley. I will see you next time.